And welcome back to another episode of The Fabric of America. I am your host, Matthew Banover of Bard's Clothing.
And I'm Melissa Oddo of Melissa Atelier.
All right. So I was so excited. You got out of the car and I love this outfit so much. You posted about it on Instagram the other day.
Yep.
I thought it was fantastic. So Melissa, what are you wearing?
Well, first off, I am an outfit repeater and I'm cool with it. This is the jumpsuit that I was telling you about on one of our previous episodes. So after we saw the Barbie movie, we were getting back into the car and I flip open Instagram and the internet just knew.
Yeah.
And they fed me this ad for this jumpsuit from Pistola Denim because it's supposedly the jumpsuit that Greta Gerwig wore while filming the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think hers actually might have been a long sleeve, but they fed me the short sleeve, which was right up my alley. But I thought I have no business buying a jumpsuit on the internet. That's, ladies, you all know, a jumpsuit is, this is a very hard buy, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's got a different torso length, a different leg length, whatever. And when this thing came in and I felt the material, it's this really nice kind of cottony, canvasy type, it's a twill. I mean, it's so comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm all right, there's holding on hope. And I put the damn thing on and it's got these cool buttons that cinch in the waist.
Yeah, the cinching.
It's very Rosie the Riveter. And I'm so down with that vibe. It's got snaps and buttons and all the things. I elect to, and actually I like it. It has enough room in the chest where ladies, again, you know the struggle of the buttons popping over your boobs and all that. I choose to wear it with a little bralette. Mine's from Aerie today. But I freaking love it. It's so comfy. Yeah. And that was my gateway into the company. And that's where I got those nice high-waisted wide leg trouser jeans too. So super duper comfy. I've got my Sambas on again today. I just like a nice flat look. But I have to tell you again, because I know you freaking love this stuff. When I think about you when I'm getting dressed, because that's not weird. Because we had talked, I think it was I don't know, probably 6 or 7 months ago. And I was trying to redo my closet and get into just condensing, right? Consolidating just things that I love, things that maybe have a little more punch to them, stuff I feel really good wearing. And you're Melissa, just go make a Pinterest board, set up a private Pinterest board and pin things that you like, pin celebrities that you like, do whatever. And one of the things I was pinning was Jenna Lyons. Okay. Former director of J. Crew. And she had a couple of situations where she was wearing these really cool jumpsuits, which I already owned this. So it's not like I went out and bought it, but I was she's styling it with heels. She's styling it with sneakers, cool and slouchy or a little bit more buttoned up and chill. And I was yes, that is my vibe. She is my spirit style animal right now.
I do love the jumpsuit renaissance.
I'm here for it, except again, you've never worn a jumpsuit, so you have no idea. Never. The joke is everybody loves the jumpsuit until you're left alone in the bathroom to face your own consequences.
It's just you and your choices.
Yeah, your choices.
That was the best.
So, because every time it's unbuttoning and stripping it all down. And it is.
And then you're just sitting there naked.
Fucking difficult, man. Yeah. It is difficult.
Yeah. No, I mean, I because I grew up in the 90s, I had overalls.
Yeah, you did.
And I did the feeling of if I move my arms, my knees feel it. The material,
you shrug your shoulders and it's all.
I liked that whole oneness of it all. But then overalls just got not cool.
Yeah.
And I do remember one time not being able to unclasp it and I had to pee and I was all right,
struggle bus.
It's the last time I'm doing this.
Yep.
I had my overalls and my turtleneck.
Yeah. When you're wearing a jumpsuit, you cannot mess around with waiting to go to the bathroom. There's none of that.
There's a couple, one of my favorite brands is Imogene and Willie down in Nashville, and they push the flight suits.
Oh, cool.
Long sleeve flight suits a lot. And I keep looking at it and I'm just I know that me of all people, us of all people, if you wear it, the occasion will just arrive.
Every day is an occasion.
I do not know where I would wear that.
I would be honest with you, I can't see you in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just what I know of you and your general sense of style, I can't
Like
Can't
I
see it.
can't see
I'd
myself.
see you
going
in a
like-
wide leg trouser before I'd see you in a flight suit.
Yeah, I can't see myself being like suit, sport coat, safari jacket, jumpsuit. Like it would just be so random.
It's a little random
Yeah,
from my perspective.
exactly. So that's the thing.
But if you love it, I don't want to talk you out of it either. But
I am making myself, which is wild, a pair of pleated pants.
wow.
And I'm going a little bit wider on the leg.
Okay.
I'm just like tipping my toe in.
Okay.
Tailored look.
I'm into it for the gentleman. We talk about Coleman Domingo a lot.
Yes.
He is always
God,
rocking that look.
he's a star.
He should be.
Yeah.
He's quite amazing. And I could see you pulling a lot of inspo from him, but well done. Well done.
Yeah. Okay. So I love your outfit.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you. I decked myself out in my gold today. I had a really awesome client this week who's like, she's Greek, her whole family's Greek. They're speaking Greek when they're with me, the whole thing. And she was just like decked out in gold. And I love like stacking my jewelry anyway, but she was like extra, extra.
Yeah.
And I was looking at her and I'm like, where's all your jewelry from? She's like, it's all from Greece. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And she looks at me and I was like, I have a lot of gold from Italy. And she's like, yeah, because that's just what we do. And I'm like, yes, it is what we do. So I've got like my horn on. This is my little ruby cross from my great uncle who he's now passed, but he was a Monsignor in Italy.
What?
I got my Sicilian little horn. And then, of course, it's not actual gold, but my Demelis gangsta chain.
You are.
I love it.
Youths would say a whole vibe.
I'd like to be a whole vibe. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Coming from you, that's high praise.
Yes.
All right. Enough about me.
Yep.
Your outfit.
So
set.
yeah, I am trying to just throw caution to the wind.
You are. You've mixed pattern and
Yep.
stripe and
Yes, I'm mixing pattern. I'm mixing stripe and sheep and brown shoes.
Phenomenal.
So this shirt is one of the few shirts that I have remaining in my closet from the previous store I worked at. So
Okay.
I mentioned that I try to purge everything. Every time I get a new job, I want to wear what I am representing at the time.
yeah.
Because it doesn't do me any favors if I'm rocking a couple sport coats or suits or whatever from a previous job and you see me and you're like, hey,
Right.
Matt, I love that jacket. Where do you get it? And I'm like, oh, well, you know. So I try
I'm
to.
going to give you some pushback on that, though, because you could just say, I can make it for you.
Yes. No, I definitely. So now that my last job in in Bard's, I'm somewhat in the same realm. It was not, I don't feel as bad having a little bit of crossover, more personal reasons.
Gotcha.
But previous to that was Joseph A. Bank & Express.
Yep.
So if somebody complimented me on like a really nice jacket that was like $30.
You're like, this is a different. Yeah.
And so
Understandable.
I had one guy, this was crazy. I was wearing a suit from Joseph A. Bank working at the boutique store and I was trying to sell him something and I was pretty new. I might have been there like 2 or 3 weeks. And this guy comes in and he was like, I'm going to stop you right there. Clearly you don't know what you're.
You told this story. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, it haunts me. So it literally was insane. So it's like, yeah, okay. I gotta step it up. So anyway, this shirt,
The black sheep shirt.
this is my black sheep shirt. So yes, I love this shirt for what it is. I wish it came from a different place, but it's fine. The only thing that really keeps me wearing it is that it was actually from a company made, they make all their shirts in Honduras. So I was like,
okay.
So for the listener, I was born in Honduras. So I was like, all right, I can rep it. And it's just such an awesome shirt.
Do you
Like,
know about, I think it was like the Princess Diana sweater with the black sheep thing?
No.
There was like a sweater. It just like reoccurred in recent history. It was on my Instagram
okay.
and it had like all white sheep and like a
Yeah.
little black sheep. And it was
Yeah.
supposed to be her little coy way of being like, she was the black sheep in the royal
Oh.
family. Like,
It's not a subtle message.
right,
but I
right.
like it.
A little
I'm-
something, something. So
proud of her.
that's what it gives me the vibe of.
Yeah, so this definitely feels very apt, and I love it. My pants, so I made these pants. These are, the fabric is Drago, so it's very light. It's actually a 6-ounce wool.
Nice.
It's, I did a cinched bottom, which is new for me, so a little elastic bottom, and a drawstring pant on the waist, drawstring waistband. So I tried to make more like, this was my attempt at athleisure.
I was going to say, you're very sporty of you.
Yes.
But it's nice actually because it's not a stretch material. It actually looks really well elevated.
Right. Yeah. It's wool. You can make a suit out of this fabric.
I know you are anti suits with sneakers, but like I would do a gal version of that with a cute little white tennis shoe and a cool, like a linen shirt, kind of half tuck.
I often do this with a white shirt and white sneakers.
Yep.
But
I like it. But you went sockless today.
I did go well, actually, there's no show.
I was going to say they must be no show. You don't want stinky shoes. Yeah. Gross.
Exactly. And these shoes are from Magnani, which are made in Spain.
Nice.
Shoes for me are very tough, but I love these shoes. I bought these, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And I was just, I don't know if I'll ever buy another pair of shoes again. I'll just take care of these.
Nice.
They're the most comfortable shoes.
That's awesome.
In the world.
That Spanish leather is supposedly like the best leather in the whole world.
Every time I give it to my cobbler, he gives it back and it's brand new. It's like starting from scratch.
Who is your cobbler?
He is on Park Road in West Hartford. I believe it's Marcos, but his it's Park Road Shoe Repair.
Okay.
And he does shoes, leather, bags, whatever you got, bring it to him. He is amazing.
That's awesome. I use Fazio in Newington.
Yes.
In Liberty Plaza.
Yeah.
He's fantastic too.
Yeah.
I need everyone to never die and never retire.
This guy my guy moved from New York, his whole family. He was in Brooklyn, I think, and moved his whole family to West Hartford in the beginning of 2020.
Oh boy.
Chapter.
And we all know, at least he's still doing, so that's good.
So he survived.
He made it through.
He survived. Yep. He's crushing it. So the topic for today, I was like, okay, so we've done a lot of great topics about things that we know.
Right.
And we know them well, which is why we're talking about the wedding industry, closets, giving people tips and tricks. But the listener may not know who you are. And the listener may not know who I am.
This is true.
So we want to bring guests on here eventually.
Oh, we've got plans.
Oh.
What do you mean want to? We already have 3 down the pipeline, sir.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
So I figured, why don't you be our first guest? And then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Shitting my pants a little bit.
Oh, you should be.
But I'm also a really expert talker.
Yes.
So
2 people who can talk very well.
Excellent.
This is going to be fine. So we're going to conduct an interview and you're our guest. So I've done copious amounts of research into you and your life.
That's a scary thought.
Yes.
And to the listener, this was not like, we knew this might be the topic. I have no idea what he is about to ask. So bear with me too if I'm like a stuttery mess trying to answer whatever questions are going to come out of your mouth.
So first question. Did you always know bridal was in your future?
No, that's an easy one. That was a softball. No.
Yes.
So quick backstory. When I was about like 12, the Style Network came to be. I don't know if you had cable at the time, but there was like this channel explosion and there was the Style Network.
Yeah.
And they just showed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like fashion shows, fashion critiques, anything behind the scene. It was just style all day long. And I would pop on that channel and just kind of like sit there and be mesmerized. But and they're totally opposite ends of the spectrum. I had 2 favorites.
Yeah.
One was Valentino.
Okay.
And the other was Betsy Johnson. Mm-hmm. And Betsy was doing like the runway at the time, not a lot of the mass market. And it kind of went down to like a middle market range eventually. So I was obsessed with them. And the Valentino, like when he finished off with like these red dresses and that like deep crimson, all this, I was like mesmerized. So I thought like, I want to be a fashion designer. Because what did they tell you growing up? You're going to pick something that you love. So you never work a day in your life. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Gag. Anyway, so I'm like, oh my God, fashion's so fun. And I'll never work a day in my life because I'll be like a cool fashion designer.
Yeah.
So literally that was like the spark. And I would sit in study halls and I would like sketch and doodle and draw little like tops. I'd do a whole page of tops and then I'd do a whole page of bottoms and like they were so rudimentary. They were so awful. Wound up at FIT, just to fast forward, and I got really into tailoring. I was really into like hard fabrics and just stuff with more like body that I felt like I could manipulate better in a way that was like appealing to me and rewarding to me. I could have done a specialty in evening wear, and I was like, miss me with that shit. I don't want to touch a chiffon, a soft fabric. No, thank you. No interest whatsoever. So I never wanted to even think about evening wear. But I think we talked about in a previous episode that when I had my first child, I had moved back to the area. My cousin owns Listrina Girls Bridal Shop in Middletown, Connecticut. And I just hit her up and was like, hey, do you need any help with the shop? I've got a lot of retail level experience. And she took me on, and it wound up, a couple months later that her tailor fell on some ice and she broke her back. She busted her ankle. And eventually I went to go work for her instead because I already knew how to run machines. And that was my first like toe into bridal. And as far as the sewing part goes.
Right.
Because I was consulting before that. So it was interesting.
Yeah. I like that natural path. Now, where were you born?
Ooh, I was born in Middletown, Connecticut. I'm a townie.
Really?
Yeah.
Haven't really ventured out, come back. Like you went to New York,
I did. Yeah.
And then just came back.
I never thought I would come back though.
Really?
Really. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a town called Middlefield, even though I was born at the hospital in Middletown. When I was growing up in Middlefield, I was like, this town's so boring. Like, there's nothing to do here, whatever. I'm going to go to New York and I'm never coming back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I did always know that I wanted to have a family. And I did always kind of know that I probably wouldn't be able to do that in New York City.
Yeah.
And so when I met my husband, he's actually from Long Island. And I had said to him, like, I'm flexible. I will go anywhere. Like, where do you want to go? You want to move somewhere? I'd go cross country. Like, I'm always kind of down for like the adventure a little bit. But I won't necessarily push it though. Necessarily. Or my mom always joked too. She was like, I'm so glad I studied abroad in Italy for a year when I was in college. And she was like, I was so glad you didn't meet somebody because I knew if you did, you probably wouldn't come back. Like,
really?
So she knew. She told me that later on. Yeah. So I met my husband. He's from Long Island. And he actually came out. It was when he came out to visit me over here and kind of saw like quiet country life a little bit. He was like, oh, we're going to go there. Like we'll have like a house and a little property and like whatever. And he appreciates the open space of Middlefield. Now we live in Higganum. Yeah. Very similar. A lot of farmland, a lot of trees, a lot of greenery. Because a lot of stuff on Long Island in particular is very like congested and a little bit more, it's not as rural. It's just more suburban. Yeah. So he likes the space and the quiet and whatever. And I have to tell you, I don't think I'd live anywhere else. I don't know if I've just kind of like planted roots or what it is, but I'm like, oh man, we're so lucky. First of all, pizza in Connecticut. The best, period. And now proven by Congress. Yeah.
Scientist.
Second, right. 2 and 2 is 4, and Connecticut has the best pizza. Yep. Fight me.
And OnlyFans.
And OnlyFans, I forgot. That's right. In the same breath. But like, you can go, like, it's so easy. Like, you can go to Maine and go up north. You can go to Vermont and go to the mountains. You can go to the water. You can go to New York City. You can go to Boston. Like, it's actually fucking awesome to live in Connecticut. I used to really crap on it and not think it was very cool.
Connecticut groupie.
I love it now. I'm such a dork. Yeah, I love it.
You could never convince me.
And you do get all the seasons. I will tell you, like, I am in my old age getting tired of winter. I'm tired of the cold. The winters have been more mild around here lately, so that's fine. That's a win. But there were a couple years when we first got married and were living over here where we were like, should we move to California? Like, what should we do? This is miserable. But there's nowhere else we liked enough or that we could afford to move to. So, and all of our family's here. So we're kind of, it's not that we're stuck, but it's a lot to like, especially with children, to get up and move your whole life and take your kids away from stuff and not have your parents around. I'm close to my mom, stuff like that. So
you're close with your mom?
Very close with my mom.
So mom and dad, they're in the picture?
Yeah, interestingly, it's funny that you say that. So my dad and I have been estranged for quite some time, just to get real personal, for quite a few years. And recently I reached out to him and was just like, hey, I don't know, not I don't know. I know exactly why.
Yeah.
we aren't speaking and we're
Yeah.
not close and whatever.
Yeah.
But I said, I think maybe it's time to just grab some dinner and do some air clearing. And so we don't really have any expectations for where it will go, but it was nice to have some clarity on some things, get a little closure on some things, and just kind of like be.
Right.
It's a much more peaceful scenario in my life with both my parents. But my mom and I are very tight. Like we're kind of the same person.
Oh, really? Wow.
For better or worse. Like we're both cancers.
Yeah.
We're both very like gung ho. Like my mom will work like 60 hours a week or more. Like she's just a badass go-getter. And I remember a time in my life where, and I don't know if I just imagined it or if it was really real, but my perception of her was just like, she's my mom and she's just like doing things. And she was just kind of like there.
Yeah.
And there was a time when she got a position and got a promotion as like a manager, and she's a nurse. And as I saw her like go into that role, I really saw her like find a voice and find like strength and become like the badass I feel like she was always supposed to be. And I feel like it kind of like, I don't know if it was the position, but that's kind of like the time in life that I associate with that pendulum swing. And I remember watching her and being like, oh yeah, like my mom's killing it. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
So I was really proud of her and happy for her. And I feel like that's just kind of been a continuous path in her life and professional, arena.
That's cool.
So,
Sisters, brothers?
Yes, I have one sister and one brother. I am the oldest child.
Really?
Yes. So growing up, my parents called me the guinea pig.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really realize how true that is until now I have my own children and you just trying shit out on the first one.
Yeah.
See what sticks as you go through all these like milestones and different pieces of life with them. So yeah. And I was a little hellraiser when I was a kid. So I liked to push boundaries and push buttons and, ooh, who me? Like, yes.
And we're talking about adolescent or teenager?
Mostly teenager. Okay. I was ready. Like
a little scamp.
100%. 100%. I was just pushing and pushing and pushing. And I don't know if it's, my parents were somewhat I'll say conservative. Like they just were hesitant about like me going out or doing certain things or whatever. And so I think because of that, I was always like, I'm going to push, like, because they were much easier on my brother and sister, but also like each one of us has a different personality. So my brother wasn't looking to go out a whole lot. And my sister was just a different animal. And there's 8 years between us. So there's only 3 years between my brother and I.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I think like around the time that we were growing up, like late 90s, early 2000s, it was like, there was this kind of rebellion. Yeah. Like,
and nothing was on the internet yet.
Yeah. And it wasn't like it wasn't like the 60s of a cause, a rally. It was like, I just wanted freedom.
Yeah. That was exactly it.
I just want a little bit more freedom.
Yep. And, like I never snuck out, but I was always like pushing my curfew because I had friends who, let's say their curfew was 11, my curfew would be 10, that kind of, and I'm like, this one gets to stay until 11. Yeah. And luckily I had very like trustworthy, good kid friends. Yeah. So eventually my parents were like, well, if that one can stay out, like, I guess you can stay out. Like, is that who you're with?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I would say like, I was going somewhere and I would go somewhere else, but like once I had a car, but so, all right, random funny story though. I got busted so hard for this. I went to go sleep over another girl's house. She had a bunch of girls sleeping over and we couldn't drive yet. We were like 14, 15 and they had like all ages night at the club. And we got to go to the club.
What?
Yes.
If I was raging in the club and a bunch of 14-year-olds came in.
Oh, trust me. We didn't look our age, of course.
God.
But like, what business did we have? And like, I say this now. And at the time I was like, it's all ages night. Like, it's no big deal, right? Yeah. Now I'm a parent and I'm like, I would flip tables. Like I would go ham. And my mom instinctually knew.
Yeah.
She was calling the house. She was trying to check up. I was lying through my teeth. And I don't remember how it ended, if I ended up staying the whole night or if she just came and like yanked me out of there. But
yeah, I'm imagining you walking in, like crowd on the dance floor and like the people part and she's like in the center of the dance floor, just waiting.
Me. Definitely, if she did yank me, she wasn't from the club. It was either from the gal's house or she came the next day, but she knew something was up and she was pissed.
Yeah, someone's at the club.
Yeah, it was. I loved the club. I'm sorry, because I just love dancing. I love dancing. It was so fun.
That's why I can imagine. What were your like extracurriculars?
In like high school time?
High school. Yeah, I guess.
I played soccer. I actually did dance competitively. And I took a lot of art classes. When I was a senior, I would go to the Saturday live classes at FIT every weekend. So what those were classes specifically designed for high school students that wanted to possibly attend FIT.
Yeah.
And I took a sewing class and a drawing class. And it was with FIT professors. So at the end of it, I was able, like, I flat out asked for like a recommendation letter and stuff for my application. And I think I can guarantee you that if I didn't do that program, I wouldn't have gotten into the school for sure. That was the main jam. I was very much into sports.
Yeah.
I played football in high school. I was the only girl on a football team.
What does that look like?
Fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I loved doing like random things. I was very into like weird, non-girly stuff. But then I would go from I went from being the only football player in the fall sports season to the MVP cheerleader in the basketball season. Like it was a very random.
Only football player. Like you're on the field getting tackled.
Yeah. So when at the time I was a freshman in high school, my high school then did not have a football team.
Okay.
Or I should say leading up to then didn't have a football team. I don't remember if it was my freshman year, but definitely my sophomore year, they got a football team. They started a football team. But when I was a freshman, I played for a town league in the next town over. Yeah. My brother had played for that league as well. So that was kind of our gateway. And they had like the A squad, which were the older, bigger kids, the B squad, C squad, and the D squad was like the peewees, right? Yeah. And I had cheerled for another town when I was smaller. Yeah. So I told my dad, we're a big football family. I was like, I want to play football. Yeah. So my brother was on the B squad and I was on the A squad with all the like big boys. Yeah. But there was a weight limit. So the weight limit at the time was like 145, 150. I think I was like 120 pounds. Yeah. But I couldn't get tackled by someone who was bigger than 150 because that was the cutoff. And they would do weigh-ins. And it was like full shoulder pads, full tackle, training with the dudes, like what? And it was really wild. So the first few weeks of practice, like my dad walked me to practice up the field. We sat on the bleachers. We got like a talk from the coach. And these dudes were like looking at me. Nobody talked to me. Nobody. I don't think they knew what the hell to do. Yeah. And so the first few weeks are like drills and, more of the like endurance training and all that. A lot of running, a lot of jump, whatever. So we went through all these weeks of training. Again, everybody barely talked to me. Oh, and the first practice, my dad went up to the coach. He told me later and he was like, I just said to him, like, she's one of the guys, like no special treatment, no, nothing. Like she does everything they do, period, the end. Yeah. And there was one drill that we did where they put down like a piece of like 2x8 on the ground. And you had to like get into your stance and you would just face off. Yeah. Against another individual. And I'm sure they weren't putting me up against the biggest guy on the team, but like you just had to like keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and just being really physical. Yeah. And whoever got pushed to the end of the wood, like the other person was like the winner, we'll call it, you know what I mean? And they put me up against like two different guys and I like got them all the way to. So like you could see like little bits of respect like starting to come out. Like they would kind of like nudge or high five or whatever a little more and more. And then we had a scrimmage game. Yeah. And I played tight end and I played defensive end. Okay. And so tight end, you get to like go out and like catch the ball and whatever. And I scored the first touchdown in the scrimmage game. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like that was it. Yeah. Everyone was like, you the woman. Right. High fives, like elbow bump, like whatever. Right. It was like
buying your milkshake at the club. Just like next round, we got her.
So, well, and then later on in the season, like these boys, like their moms would take them to football and stuff, and they would get such a kick, and they would like the boys would be like, we're going to Hooters. And the moms would be like, we'll take you to, what was the guys one? Oh God. No, I can't remember.
What?
There's like a guys
Isn't
strip
Hooters
club.
for guys?
No, for the women, like stripper dudes.
I don't know.
You wouldn't know. Would you? Well, the moms would be like, "We'll take you to this place instead," and so they we got quite a kick out of it. So it was a very cool season. I was in the best shape of my young life. Period. Like it was awesome, and I think from that is why when I did cheerleading the next season, I was hella strong. So I was able to like lift the flyer girls. I was like a base.
Yeah.
And I just had no fear. So I would like catch you if you fell or whatever. Like I was, I put myself in those situations of like kind of watching out for everybody.
And like you're obviously like jacked now. Like
oh yeah.
Physical strength has always been a thing in your life.
It comes and goes in waves for me. Football was definitely like the gateway to that, I would say. Because before that I was doing dance, but like that physicality of being so strong from football, I danced at the time too. And my dancing improved so much because of my like super physical strength at that time and like being like kind of lean and mean. And after that kind of piece of my life, we'll call it, when I was in college and then after college, I kind of got I got away from it just because like I didn't know what to do. I didn't have sports anymore, like in that organized fashion. And I wound up eventually falling into boxing. And I love it. Yeah. I love it. And it wound up being that a guy I worked with found a Groupon. We worked at DKNY in Soho. And he was like, I want to go try this boxing place. It's right like north of us. Yeah. So we both got the Groupon. After work one day, we put on our gym clothes and we went over to this place called Work, Train, Fight. So when it's abbreviated, it's WTF, like, which is the best. That's awesome. They're still around. If you are in the city, like, go to Work, Train, Fight. They're the best. And we took a class and it was like I'll call it cardio boxing, kickboxing, but these were like fighters. This wasn't like your aerobic, like rah, like workout. This was like, they were actually teaching you fundamentals of boxing and then like making you go ham on these heavy bags. And after the Groupon, I was like, oh no, I love this. I'm sticking with this. Yeah. And I started like losing weight, getting super lean and mean. And the owner was like, you're very talented at this. Like, I don't know if you know that. And it's very unique that you're a woman, that you love it so much and you're so friendly and approachable. And he's like, what would you say to like a job? Really? Yeah. He was like, I think you should train here. And I'm like, okay. So we started off just kind of like trading. Like I would teach some of the classes that I had been taking. Yeah. And then I could take classes and like work with their trainers and stuff. Yeah. And there was something about it at the time where I was having a little quarter life crisis. And I was like, oh, fashion is so like, oh, what am I doing here? Like it's so faceless and meaningless and whatever. And like vain and consumerish and whatever. And I wanted something like deeper. Yeah. And so I was like, well, if I could help people like get healthy and change their lives, like that's super meaningful. So I should do that. So the owner, Alberto, was like, listen.
Shout out to Alberto.
He's dope. He was like, listen, if you want to come in here, like you have to get licensed and everything. You have to take a test and whatever, get certified. But he's like, you can teach classes. You can work with one of our like head trainers to help get you where you need to be. And then you're going to study and you're going to pass that test. And he's like, we'll help make you whole if you're going to leave your job. So I actually wound up going part-time at my job first as just like a little safety net. And then I jumped right over eventually. I mean, it was not long of part-time before I jumped to training full-time. I left fashion completely. What? Yep. I got my NASM certification. I was doing actual personal training, teaching classes. I actually started training to do the Golden Gloves, which is like a amateur fighting situation. Okay. And I had actually trained for the Golden Gloves before that at a different gym. But it seemed like the universe was like, nah, you're not going to do that. Because the first time when I was training for it, I wound up in a situation like my boyfriend and I broke up. I eventually was moving and I just couldn't sustain and be at that place anymore. And then when I was at Work, Train, Fight and I was doing it, I took a class, just like a workout boxing class somewhere else. And I wound up breaking my finger.
Oh, no.
Yep. So it was just like a couple of things where I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I guess I'm not supposed to get like punched in the face in my regular life. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that ended that. But I eventually did. I actually left to work at Title Boxing Club, which is in Norwalk, Connecticut at the time.
Yeah.
I was the manager there. It's no longer there. And then I wound up back in fashion after that.
Okay.
So it was a random little like blip.
Yeah, a little detour.
Step off. Yeah, a little detour. A
Wow.
little detour of fitness. But
So in high school,
yeah,
you're a little scamp, right at the club, showering with football guys.
that did not happen, but okay.
What's like the dream? What are you thinking your life path is going to be like? What's making you happy at that time?
In high school, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted nothing but it. I thought I could eventually have like a runway show, maybe get famous.
Wow.
That was like the dream.
So fashion has really been like a part of your life.
It's been a constant. Even when I was in, this is going to sound ridiculous, but you know me, and to the listener, you're going to get to know me from this story. Even when I was doing the gym stuff, it was like, what's my outfit today? Like, how does this coordinate with company colors or not or whatever? Like it was always, and I really tried. I know this sounds so silly and stupid, but when I would go to like do the classes and work out and then you shower and like you're just kind of doing training. So you're in like just cleaner, different clothing for training other people. But it was always like, okay, like I guess I'll wear this.
Yeah.
And I was trying so hard to like have outfits and do something and be kind of put together, and other people were doing it, but it was just like there was something that got to be like missing from my life.
Now, for the listener, to make sure that we're on the same page, what is a design? What did you see yourself as a designer? Because it's not like airplane pilot where you're flying an airplane. Like there's a one thing. Fashion designer is a very broad spectrum.
Yeah.
So what did you see yourself sketching? Did you see yourself putting like textiles together? Like what was it about all of this that was
when I was having the like imagination of like, what are you going to be when you grow up? I was like, I saw myself as a designer, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And I saw myself like specifically sketching and like working with fabrics. I didn't necessarily see myself sewing because I didn't see myself as a strong sewer at the time. When I got into college, I was actually very good at draping, which is when you are laying and manipulating the fabric on a mannequin you might make a pattern from it. Like you're kind of seeing how everything flows and you're using a muslin fabric to just kind of almost like do a prototype basically. Yeah. So I was very good at that. I always got high marks in my draping classes for like being good at manipulating fabric and markings and, you know, knowing kind of which way to make stuff go to get the result that I wanted.
Yeah.
But I have to be honest, when I got to college, it was a very humbling experience in that like there were so many talented people there.
Yeah.
So many creative minds. Yeah. And I never felt like I could hold a candle.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not saying that to you know, have somebody be like, oh, but you were creative in your own way. Like, know thyself, right? Yeah. Like I knew I was strong at technical stuff, like it became apparent I was strong at technical stuff. I could formulate like a creative story or like a theme, but like creative direction I was good at. And I feel like I'm still good at, but I was not good at being creative to come up with new, edgy, funky types of ideas or types of styling or whatever. And I think at the time too, when you're like that age, you haven't totally found yourself yet. And
what age
I didn't feel this was like 18 to 21, 22.
That's why I mean, like thinking back, because we're both in our like later 30s, like thinking back to how much worldly knowledge you're trying to convey in creating something at that age,
right?
At 18,
right?
When I look at 18-year-olds now, I'm like, you need a babysitter,
quite literally.
And yet you're like, here, develop this clothing brand,
right?
So did you want a line? Did you just
I wanted a line.
Okay.
I wanted a line. I wanted to work into it. I imagined that I would work for someone else, maybe like mass market, then a little bit more niche, and then I'd grow myself into having my own thing, right? And
then I'd have falling out with
right, exactly. But I think by the time I got into college, I really and was experiencing college after like a couple years, I knew that something wasn't right. And I've told that to people, like when people are like, oh, how'd you get into this? Oh, I went to fashion design school. But like I always knew when I was there, like I'm not going to be a fashion designer. Something else is hopefully like, you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this degree and my skills? I just don't have that creative mindset to come up with something and have it like leave my body and be so. I look at, the Rosenberry of Schiaparelli. And like some of these creative ideas and some of these like new ways of merchandising, Pier Paolo from Valentino. Oh my God, my heart is broken that he's not there. Like just the way that people like have a vision for things. It's not in me. Yeah. It's just not in me. And I'm okay with that. I do think the more time you spend in a creative realm, the more you can extrapolate from that and pull into your own experiences. I definitely after college or like later, final year in college, but definitely when I was at DKNY was actually when I started to feel like creative freedom. And so I was a merchandiser for DKNY, visual merchandiser. And what that meant was I was in the store Monday through Friday, basically figuring out where product would live and how it would be put together both on the racks, on the tables, on the mannequins, to try and sell you the whole package, right? Get you to be interested in owning as much as possible. And my first couple of months there, my boss was like, you're doing a good job. You're doing the job, but you're not like making it your own. Like, I really want you. She's like, I'd rather you ask for forgiveness than permission. And I think I was so nervous that being my first time in that role. And I wanted to do a good job. And I think I played it safe, but I also played it to like my kind of boring rural upbringing in life. Yeah. And I had to just like throw caution to the wind and learn to make creative, perhaps mistakes, or see things in a different light than was necessarily my particular style and go with what was the brand. And so that was an interesting lesson. And as I started to go further and further into that was when I felt the most creative. I felt like it was the most successful like rendition of what I could contribute to the store. Yeah. And I really saw that paying dividends, even in like my personal style. I would take more like risks and chances, and I started to feel more and more confident. And at the same time, I feel like it was sort of a key age bracket in my life, because this was like 24, 25, 26. Like I was really getting to like feel like who I was and become like confident in my choices, both stylistically and outside of that realm. And that's where it really hit for me.
Who got you into sewing? Who got you into fashion? Where did this, like, the first person that said like this is important? Like,
you're gonna sew. Yeah, that was like, my nonna.
Was there a moment where there was, Melissa, you need to learn how to sew, or was it always kind of around? What's a memory that sticks out for you as like, I dig this?
It was, okay, so I have a couple of memories of both my dad's mother and then my mom's grandmother, my nonna. We called her Nonna. So first of all, my mom's mother, my nonna, was a wedding dressmaker in Italy.
Wow.
They came over to America, and I don't know how much sewing she did. She was in her 70s, 80s when I have like vivid memories of her. And I do remember her making clothes for me, which I still have some of them. And then I remember her being at the machine, and she wanted me to make like a skirt or something with her. And I remember going to Joanne Fabrics and like picking like a Vogue pattern or something like that. And I remember her trying to get me to pay attention to like how she's laying fabric and what she's cutting and how she's doing it. And I was like, you do it, Nana. Like, I had no interest. I was young at the time. I'm going to guess I was somewhere between like 8 and 10 when that was happening. And I remember a very similar thing happening with my dad's mom, my grandma Etta, where she did bulk of the work, but I remember picking a pattern and being in, she had like a split level and being in on like the lower level with her in the machine. And she kind of like did it all, but wound up with like an apron and a skirt and then a wrap skirt and whatever. Yeah. So I remember sewing, like being there and being around, but nobody ever was like, you have to do this. You have to know, like, it was not of importance. And I'm sure that my mom's mother can sew in the sense of like fixing a button or mending something. I don't know if she sewed like that. Yeah. I don't have memories with her that I can recall. My mom doesn't sew. You know, my dad obviously doesn't sew. Like, you know, there was nothing.
Yeah, I remember going like back to school shopping or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was get the pants, and the automatic response once I got the pants were Cammy will sew them. Like,
got you.
You know, Cammy will hem them.
Yep.
Or something like that. And I remember going up into Cammy's house and she would like pin, you know, all this. And she had a sewing machine with and it was so natural.
Yeah.
And I remember going to other people's houses and their grandparents had sewing machines.
Yep.
I remember that in the 90s.
Yeah.
Being like, wow, this is so cool. And now it's like.
Yeah. And with like, you know, like when you're talking about like memories and stuff, like we laugh and it's a joke now about the Dansk, like the cookie tin, but it's a joke for a reason, right? Yeah. Like that's literally when my grandmother passed away, or no, I'm sorry, when my great grandmother passed away, I wound up with the Dansk tin of her sewing supplies. Yeah. So I've got like the old spools of thread that are wooden and not plastic. You know what I mean? Like a bag full of random buttons and trims and notions and all this stuff. And I have the tin. It's literally in the next room over. And it's just like,
so cool.
Yeah. But that's really what people did and what people had.
Yeah. I have a pair of shoe trees.
Yeah.
From my dad.
Yep.
And they're from Alden, and they have his initials.
Yeah, they are.
They're so
shout
sick.
out Alden. Yeah.
Oh, made in America, baby.
Right.
So one thing that I'm surprised, because this is one of the things that I know about you the most, and yet it's something that I am not hearing in your story as much.
Ooh.
So I need clarification. This sense of community.
Yeah.
Everything that you've said is very much like, I'm a rebel rouser. I wanted to be like one on a team of boys. I wanted to do, you know, one thing. I don't blend in with the other designers. Where does this sense of community, where does this sense of community building, where does this start to arrive?
Yeah.
And like, what does community mean to you now?
That's really funny because it was such an organic thing that happened, but also so obvious at the same time. So basically, when I got started doing bridal alterations, I was in my home and I was working myself to death and was like, oh my God, where are the other people that are doing this, right? And we're also like coming up in the age of the internet and all the things. So I'm trying to like find people online and this and that, which is also difficult because the average age of a seamstress is like 55 and over, according to like the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So they're not everybody's on the internet, right? Not everybody's going beyond Facebook or having a good website or whatever. A lot of it's like been word of mouth for them, what have you. And COVID put a huge damper on things because I think it pushed a lot of the elder sewing community to retire because they might have been on the edge and they're like, nope, forget it. I'm out. Like, I don't want your germs. I don't want to see you. And this is my time. Like, this is my sign. And so it was right around that time. It was actually before that because I was having this idea in 2019, which is when I really started it. But post 2020, it was like, this is a no brainer. And that was that, like, how do we get more people to be involved in sewing because it is such a dying art, because that's all anybody would say to me is the, you know, mothers of the bride in particular would be like, no offense, but like, I did not expect you to be the person. Or they would ask like, so are you the one that sews it too? Like they're very hesitant because they can't believe that somebody, I was in my early to mid 30s at the time. They can't believe that someone in that age demographic is doing this work.
Yeah.
And so they always had questions or they were maybe like a little untrusting. I was like, all right, how do we change that perspective? And as I started to, hang out on Instagram, and the algorithm started to know me, and I started to meet more and more people in that sewing life, it was like, well, why don't we make a community? And I had talked to Beth Chapman, who is over at White Dress by the Shore and the Shoreline in Connecticut and Clinton. And she has a space for bridal retailers called the White Dress Society. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like, it's community over competition, talking about best practices and ways to elevate business, which therefore, like, the rising tide lifts all boats, and helping the whole wedding industry as a whole, right? This retailer industry as a whole, which was really instrumental for them when COVID hit. It was a big, important piece of the puzzle. So I was like, well, why can't I do that, but for seamstresses? And at first I was like, we should keep it really big and broad. It should be everyone, cobblers and leather makers and all this stuff. And then I'm like, no, we got to like kind of hone in, right? So I wanted to make it at least specific to sewing. I think because so many of us are in bridal, it kind of organically formed into majority bridal, which is fine. But everybody's truly welcome. So I started this group. We called it the Stitch Collective. And it just started off as like an Instagram page and a little like, hey, let's chit chat kind of one-on-one here and there. And as I was trying to build and build, I got a new website. We looked at this platform called Circle, which is kind of like, the best way I could describe it is like a private Facebook page. So you have to, sign up, you come into our circle, quote unquote. And we have a free version and a paid version. The paid version's a bit more curated. You get a little bit more like formal speakers, things like that. And the free version is more open. It's more, I'll say conversational. Like there's just a lot more like broadness to it. And around that same time, we started to get a little bit of like publicity. And Beth actually was, I think, helpful in that she had spoken to someone from the New York Times about something completely different. I think it was when David's Bridal like filed for Chapter 11 again or something like that. Again. And the author had said, do you know of any other like interesting stories? And she said, yeah, you should do something about seamstresses. And this is like a dying art, and there's not going to be enough people and like trained hands to do all the work because the wedding industry is so huge. And so sure enough, this woman called me, and I gave her a bunch of my colleagues' names as well, because it's not about me. It's about the group. And it's not only a national issue, it's an international issue. I talked to folks in the UK and Canada, people who are very like, they're few and far between, and it's really unfortunate. I do think it's a more popular craft that's still more appreciated in Europe. But it is not a unique to America problem. But it's pretty staunch.
But before that, was community a thing you cared about in your teens? Was it something you cared about in your other jobs? Like, where did was it something that
triggered it?
Like, was it ever around before? Did you?
I mean, sure. I think there's a sense of community in everything, right? Like, well, first of all, I grew up in a super small town, so it's very community oriented anyway, right? Everybody kind of knows everybody. Everybody is, for better or worse, in your business. But like, you're kind of looking out for each other, right? It's a small group. You kind of know everybody. But then there's also like team sports. So even though I was the only girl, I'm still on a team, right? Like you're working towards the whole. So that was permeated through a lot of my high school years. We did the Appalachia trip, and there was always something, I think, there. I don't know that it was like a conscious, like, I'm going to do that because it's community driven. It was just like, I like people. I like talking. I like doing good stuff and stuff that makes me feel good. And I like sports. Like, yay, sports.
Can you look back and reflect and be like, oh yeah, see, that's why I liked that? Can you look back at anything and say, now that I'm so involved in community, now that I'm so involved in like helping other people out and them helping me out, like I can see that is why I was interested in like, say, the boxing. Like people you wanted to help other people get healthy and,
definitely. I think it's all interrelated. I'll be honest with you, until like this conversation right now, I've never sat and like analyzed, does one impact the other, but it does, like, you can certainly relate it, right?
Yeah.
Like from just the time in my life where I could have like a conscious understanding of teams and teamwork and community. Like I was always kind of interested in that, like just not purposefully, I'll say. It was just like, I just like this. I just like being here. I like how it makes me feel. I like this sense of community. I like having people that I can rely on and that can rely on me, like camaraderie, you know, kinship and that sort of a thing. So that definitely like started organically and has like continued throughout my life. Yeah, for sure.
I think it's so interesting when I'm hearing your story. It's very much in the beginning. It's like march to the beat of your own drum. Like I'm gonna do me, rage at the club, like do all this, and then like hard right into like we're all in this together. Like it's like a very there's a thread that kind of goes through it all, which is I want to feel a certain way around certain people. It's like that sense. And
I'm going to interrupt you real quick because, you know, one of the things like, you know, so I talk about like, all right, my high school and my early years and whatever, and this experience, like, I feel like it sounds like I was so confident and I was so whatever. And I did, like, I guess it takes a certain amount of guts to like go be the only girl on the football team and whatever. But at the same time, I very much felt like, and I'm just talking specifically about high school, like I felt like the ugly duckling. I felt very awkward. I also had broad interests. So I didn't like, this was like the age of cliques, really. There was like, you know, the sporty kids and the popular kids and the whatever. And not that it was like a bullying or anything like super negative, but I always felt like I didn't quite belong to any one group. And at the time I felt like I didn't have like a solid community.
Yeah.
I had a lot of like half communities. So like I was friends with this group over here and I was friends with that group over there, but not always did these two groups mix.
Right.
And so it was a very interesting like situation that I could find myself in of like being friends with someone in each group, but those friends not knowing each other or not caring to hang out with each other.
Yeah.
And I always felt kind of insecure. And I think a lot of us go through that. I don't think that's like exclusive to me. And I don't think mine was like so bad and debilitating.
Yeah.
But I was always kind of longing. And again, because I was in a small town, I think I was always longing for that like start over and like kind of be who you were meant to be type of thing, which I felt like college gave me a little bit of, was like leaving home. Nobody knows you. You can kind of reset. And that was like the trying to
You're like Belle.
find myself.
More than this provincial life.
Oh God. Yeah. At the time. Yeah. I was like, screw this town. Like, whatever. But oh my God, I wanted to be like so much cooler. But you know, here we are.
We're nearing the end of this and I'm bummed because I could talk to you and listen to you for hours.
Oh, thanks. Your ears aren't bleeding yet?
Yeah.
That's cool.
No, I love it because I think that we get so let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. And
wow, you are pulling out
I know. I'm
Disney
feeling it.
references today.
I'm feeling the type of way. I think it's so interesting because I think your story is so, I don't want to say similar to mine, but it shows that being in fashion doesn't have to be like, you know, you were born with all the finest cloths,
right?
And like have to have the sense of style and have always been like the cat.
That was always your path or whatever.
Like, it's so I just did it. I went along with it. I found my way. I found my people. And then I sought out my people and I sought out the opportunities. I mean, we've barely even said anything about Demelis and where you're going and all of this. But I think it's so important to see this groundwork that has been laid and to wrap up, what is something that you wish more people knew and or I hope you answer both. What is something you're glad you now know?
Ooh. That's a tricky one to answer. So like something I wish more people knew in general is that like I got a good solid answer for that one because I was talking to my husband about this. I wish that more people were aware from a young age that your life is really fucking long.
Yes. I was thinking the same thing.
And I remember as a young person, my whole like cognizant, like next goal thing was like, you're going to get to college and then you're going to graduate and have a job and then you get married and have your kids. And like, that's it.
Right.
I never thought beyond that. Yeah. What does that look like? What are the specifics? What is every day like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And nobody kind of prepared me mentally for the long game.
Yeah.
And now, so even when I was like having kids when I had my first child and then my second child, like it was like, okay, well, life has to change for a little while because I have to do A, B, and C to care for my young children.
Yeah.
Now my kids are in a different phase of their life, so I can do X, Y, and Z. Like, you know, what's the long-term plan for after, like, you know, starting Demelis? Some people want to have a business where they just like, they ride it and it's good and it's steady Eddie and that's cool. And I was never quite like built that way. I'm always like, what's the next project? What's the next thing? What's the next avenue? What's the next whatever? I love jobs. Like, love jobs.
Yeah.
I love doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I love like pushing and experimenting and adventure and all that stuff. So it's always for me like, all right, what is the next thing? And I do have to, you know, part of my wizened age, whatever, is like, you can't do it all. You probably shouldn't do it all. Take a step back and like, pick a thing, right? And pick the next thing. So, but I'm thinking long term. What does it look like when I'm 50? At what point do I want to retire? How do we work that backwards into like, what do I need to make that happen? And, you know, all kinds of elements. So that was your first question. Tell me your second question again.
One thing you know. What's something you're glad you know now?
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it would probably be in that same vein.
Yeah, you kind of answered it.
It's kind of, a little of both, because now I feel, and so where my initial gut was going on this when I was trying to say like, oh, it's tough to answer, is because I think back to when I was young, and you have to go through a lot of that, like ignorance, experimenting, learning life. Yeah. So you could say all this stuff to a young person, but like, they're not going to know until they know. So it's a little bit of a catch-22
and also
on
that sense of time. It's so, like, you hit the nail on that. I just wish more people could understand it's okay to fail. It's okay to start over. It's okay to do all this. Like they talk about your different acts of life. Exactly. Like that's where I'm at. Like, I don't know what act I'm in now. I'd probably have to like go back and quantify them all. But like, I feel at this age right now, as an elder millennial, I have more energy than I did
100%
10 years ago.
Yes.
And I am now way smarter than I was.
Yep.
I'm like, when I was in my 20s, I had a bunch of energy, but it was to rage at the bar.
Right.
And like, live life and be fun and be open, which to your point, you need.
Yes.
But now it's like, I feel like I never at 22 could have gotten up at like 4 and gotten to
no
work,
way. Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
But like, I could stay up till 4 being stupid.
Right. Well, it's because your priorities are different,
exactly.
right? So I feel like I've even honed in on what my current priorities are, and those will definitely shift and change, and even year to year. And I feel like you do the same thing too. And I know we're relating it to business, but I do, like, when I'm talking about like the new year and my goals and whatever, and resolutions and whatnot, I look at the whole picture and I try to reflect back on the year of like, all right, you know, was I able to, it's not about like, oh, my goal was to like do 3 workouts in a week or whatever. It's like, okay, did I find some sort of harmony between my work and life? What was working for me? What was a total shit show? Can I affect that shit show? Or is it just kind of like that way because it's that like things outside of my control? And just really like grappling with the different facets of life as you're living it, because it's gonna change. That's the one thing I always thought, like, oh, you're gonna live the same day, like Groundhog Day on repeat over and over. And some people love that and like yearn for that routine. I like a solid foundation to the routine, but I actually need some of that like differing stuff, because otherwise I'll go nuts. But also that makes things difficult when you have some constant changes, or like our businesses are kind of, mine in particular is very seasonal, so like I have to prepare for all these different pieces of that puzzle. So
Melissa, this was amazing.
Matthew,
I'm so glad after 15 years,
dude,
still I can enjoy just to get to know you, Tom.
Oh, well, Thanks.
So awesome. And I'm so glad that the listener got to hear more about you and your background. And
Thank you, listener.
And thank you very much. And we will be back next week with another episode of The Fabric of America.